Why use on-screen game controls when you could be using a controller from any of the major video game consoles? I'm going to show you how to do that with your Android device next. Hands on Android is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
This is TWiT.
Games on our phones have become such a big deal over the years. And yes, for quite a while, there have been the games that have been made for mobile. They revel in their tap-tactic simplicity. The domination of games like Candy Crush come to mind there. But as our phones have evolved with more powerful processors and tons of RAM, so has the depth of the games being created for those smartphones. It's not difficult to find some mobile games out there that actually look and play pretty close to as good as even more recent console titles. It's not quite on par with today's console offerings, but the gap is definitely narrowing with every passing year. Now, sometimes tapping on a screen to move a character around just doesn't cut it. But if you happen to have a recent game console in your possession, well, lucky you. You might actually have a controller that can easily be synced to work with and control some of the games on your Android device. It's important to note that not all games work with gamepads. Developers have to actually bake in support for gamepad control, and not every game supports this by default. Just a couple of games that you might want to check out if this piques your interest. There's Call of Duty Mobile, Fortnite, Grid Autosport, Horizon Chase, Beat Hazard 2, Evoland 2, and that's just to name a few of my own standouts. And I'll show a few of these off today as we connect each controller. So let's get started with that. All right, so why don't we start with the PlayStation 4. This is the controller and the console that I have at home that kind of inspired this walkthrough. So on the PlayStation 4 controller, this is how you turn it into Bluetooth sync. You hold down the PlayStation button while also holding down the share button. When I do that, the light bar is going to start blinking at some point. There we go, now it's blinking for me. That's my cue to go into Android, pull down the shade here. I'm going to long tap on the Bluetooth quick setting, pair a new device, and you can see right up at the very top there, it says wireless controller. I'll go ahead and tap that. It's going to initiate the pairing. Yes, I want to go ahead and accept the pair, so I'll click pair, and boom, what you can see now, right now, currently connected up at the very top is the wireless controller. And so, to kind of show this off, I'm going to launch into Beat Hazard 2 here. This is a music game. Maybe I should turn it down. Maybe a little loud. But you can start to see that as I start to use the controller, it's going to start jumping through the interface. I can play the current track. This is actually a really great game. This is a great example of a game that works almost better with a hardware controller than it does with the on-screen controls. It's still fun, but it's a lot more fun when you've got the hardware controller. So that's the PlayStation 4 controller. All right, go away, Beat Hazard. We're going to go next to the Xbox controller here. Now, you want to be sure that you have the right Xbox controller for this to work. Take a look at this controller, and you'll see that this whole plastic mount up here that surrounds the Xbox button, it's all one piece. If you have one of the Xbox controllers where this is a separate piece of plastic that surrounds this, it will not support Bluetooth sync to Android. So that's kind of the first thing to take a look at. But what you do on the Xbox controller, if you have the right one like I do, it's very similar to PlayStation actually. You hold down the Xbox button as well as this syncing button at the very top. I'm going to hold that down, and now we've got the blinking light on the Xbox button. Once again, I could go to my Bluetooth settings, which right now is still connected to the PlayStation one, so I'm going to forget that one. And now, if I go into pair new device, I'm going to see here, I hope, the Xbox wireless controller down at the very bottom of the list. There's no question that's the right controller. Go ahead and tap it. It starts to pair. I will accept that pairing. And boom, it moves up to the very top. You can see that the light on the controller has stabilized. It's now solid, and we're all good to go. And Evoland 2, well, this is a game that if you ever really enjoyed playing something like Zelda, like old school Legend of Zelda, this is a game that kind of revels in that kind of old school playability. And I'll go ahead and get into a new game here, because I haven't really started a game on this phone. But it is very, very familiar controls. This is, of course, the walkthrough, so it's not that exciting. But sure enough, it operates just the same. I highly recommend this game. It's got a lot of Nintendo Zelda, Legend of Zelda influence to it, and it's a lot of fun. It's really well done. There we go. I'm going to stop playing, though, because I could spend all day with this game. We'll go ahead back out to the main screen. And finally, we've got the Nintendo Switch controller. I will say that in playing around with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, I encountered some games that didn't map quite right, so your mileage may vary. But again, it's a very simple process. So heading over here to the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, all we have is a single button. You can see down here this little syncing button. Let's see if I can show that to you. When I hold this down, on the underneath side, there's this row of LEDs that starts flashing back and forth. That says that it's put into pairing mode. So once again, I'll go to my Bluetooth settings. I'm going to go ahead and forget the Xbox one. I don't want to confuse my Android device. And go ahead and put it into a sync mode or into adding a new device mode. And I'll scroll through here, and sure enough, Pro Controller up at the very top. I'll go ahead and tap that, and it will pair. And it will kick it up to the very top once it's got a successful pairing. And it's doing that right now. It's a little bit slower, it seems like, but we're done. Now, one thing that's a little confusing with the Switch Pro controller is that even though it's paired, it still does this light dancing back and forth thing. That kind of tells you that you are connected. I would love to see some visible feedback, like it gets solid or a different color similar to what you get on the other controllers. But nonetheless, that's how it works with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. If I go out, I'm going to go ahead and show off a pretty awesome racing game, Grid Autosport. And if you like car racing games on Android, this one totally has like a nice console feel to it. Very well done on the graphics side. There's actually a bunch of graphics packs that you download as you're installing it to kind of increase the graphics and quality and all that. But once I jump in, let's go ahead and get there. All right, so we have Grid fired up here, and now, boom, I've got the analog sticks working the way I expect them to. Brakes on the left, gas on the right, trigger fingers, and it works without a hitch. Like I said, some other games didn't give me as easy of a setup as this one did. But you can check it out if you have the controller hanging out. You can do your best to see which games map appropriately. And some games will allow you to map whichever way you like. Now, important to note, this is all shown on Android 10. If you are on Android 9, you might not have the same luck with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. The mapping for the Pro controller was added with Android 10, so you might have to do more manual mapping on Android 9. But Android 9 did officially get all of the mapping for both the Xbox One controller and the PlayStation controller as well, the PlayStation 4. So you'll have good luck there getting any number of these controllers to work if you want to spend a little bit more time on Android 9. So you see, it's actually pretty simple to do this. And now you can wean yourself off of the on-screen analog controllers and back onto real hardware controllers that, frankly, put more fun into the gaming experience itself. Well, that's all I got for this week. You can send me your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them on the show. That's Hands on Android at twit.tv. We have new episodes that post every Thursday, which means you should subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Subscribe links can be found at twit.tv/HOA, and you can even jump onto the YouTube channel and subscribe there if that happens to be your cup of tea. That's it. I'm going to see y'all next time on Hands on Android. Bye, everybody.